the full theory of change document. This is really great. So what we're going to do now is spend about 10 minutes with everyone reading through and reflecting on the full document. And so what I'm going to do is, or what I would recommend when you go on and read through the full document of everyone else's feedback, comments, and or everyone else's theory of change. Read through, think about it through the lens of your own work group. What are the intersections and impacts? What else do you think? What thoughts, reactions, ideas, suggestions do you have? Um, as you go through, you can add post-it notes to the side or comments. If you want to add, um, you can just add a note to next to what's there. Um, and then you can,
How do
um,
you do that? Add a note.
so you can go, so a couple options. You can add a comment, which is down here, which then lets you comment. Um, or if that is complicated, you also can add a new sticky note and just add something on the side. So that'll be about 10 minutes. At 10:45 as a full group, we'll go around and discuss questions, reactions, comments, and anything else that you all want to share. We're going to use a practice that I do frequently in groups like these called rounds, which you might have done before or not. The idea behind a round is that we have a prescribed order. You go in the order, you go after the person who's in front of you. Um, and we'll keep doing rounds until either we run out of time or people run out of things to say. If you have nothing to say, you can pass. So don't feel like you have to say something, but this is what this helps us sort of move onward. And when you're sharing back, you're sharing anything that you think is critical or that you want to make sure to emphasize for the full group. The what's really important here as we think about this process together is this is going to form the foundation of the report. So I'm going to come back out of this meeting. I have one more document with some questions that I'll have for each of you as well. But then this is really what's going to create the basis for all of the recommendations that we put in the report. So really want to make sure that we walk out of the meeting today with everyone feeling good about what we have here. Clear thoughts, questions?
Katie,
Excellent. Hmm.
is it to get exact, so can you put in the chat exactly what we're doing, like the next steps, so that we can refer to it in case anybody jumps on?
Yep.
That way we know how much time we have and jumping back on, and then
Okay.
that'd be great for me.
Absolutely. Okay. While I put that in the chat, take a look at the Miro board, read through what's on there, put in your comments, and let me know if you have any questions. Okay, take 2 more minutes to read through the board, and then we're going to be very chatty. So if you need to go to the bathroom, grab some water, grab a snack, whatever you need to do, now is a great time to do that. Always helps when I talk with the mute button. Anyone good? Need more time? If you do need more time, let me know how much more.
Like 2 more minutes, maybe.
Fabulous.
Yeah, I
Okay,
was gonna say like 2 or 5 more minutes, somewhere in there.
excellent. Let's start with 3, and then we'll see if we need more. Okay, ready? I'm taking that as a yes. Fabulous. Okay, so we're moving into the round portion of the call. Once again, I put the order in the chat. I will flag for you if um when you're up, but also just please feel free to start talking after the person before you finishes. As a reminder, what we're looking for here are sort of high level thoughts, concerns, questions, reactions. Anything that you feel is really important in order for us to collectively feel good about what's on the board. If you feel great and everything is groovy, don't feel like you need to take up time just to take up time. Unless you're like me and just always love to hear the sound of your own voice. You can always pass. So if everything is good, you pass, and that's great. If you have thoughts that you don't feel comfortable sharing in the full group, or anything else, feel free to shoot me a message on the side. Okay. Elena, you good to kick us off?
Yeah, I'm good to kick off. I actually don't have any, other than I made a note that when we were looking at accountability, I guess I was thinking differently on the accountability, so I can go and update that. But I agree with a lot of the things that are already in there, and I can see the overlap with a lot of them. And then I appreciate the comments. There's a few things that we want to add or that wanted to be added for like indicators of success, which I appreciate the increased feelings of empowerment. So am I okay to put those into ours, or do we need to leave them as comments?
I think you should go forth and put them in.
And that is it. That's all I have.
Amazing. Amelia.
I am gonna pass it this round because I am driving and I can't see anything on the board. So as soon as I'm into the office, I'll pop in and I might have comments next round.
Fabulous. Annalise.
I don't have anything to add.
Awesome. Ashley.
I don't have anything to add.
Diane. Oh, Diane is gone. Ellen.
I don't have anything to add at this point either. Looks good.
Okay. Jenna.
So I have two questions. I just do one this round and then one. Okay,
We do
perfect.
both of them. Go.
Oh, okay. One was I'm just curious where we can find the list that's referred to in work group one around let's see, it says identify the who's and what's of education, see list. So I would just love to see that list. And then the other one I had was in the work group for funding streams, I think. It's kind of, I don't know where it went, but there was something discussing like needing to change OHAs in regards to insurance reimbursing for Z codes. And I'm just curious to hear more about that thought.
Do we respond or do we wait for our turn on the round?
Why don't you respond? And if it gets wild and crazy, then we'll take a different action.
We are really wanting to make sure that two things happen in relation to the insurance reimbursements. One is that there is like an established case rate, like ideally a monthly value-based payment that is reflective of the actual work that folks are doing for these kids, because it's not all just in that 1 hour of clinical service. And you know, how do we establish that like there's a billing code that you can submit that is going to make sure that there is a reimbursement that is equitable for the service being provided, but also there is a component in there about you know, there was this plan that insurers were going to remove the diagnostic criteria line for kids, and that would impact these kids specifically. And just making sure that that's truly enforced with the nature that it was intended. Um, we are hearing that providers are still running into barriers of being told like, oh, well, this kid, it's not, it might prevent them from going to jail, but it's not going to prevent them from ending up in a mental health institution. So, why would we pay for that service? So I hope I'm doing a good job of representing that information, because that piece is less familiar to me, but I think I might be the only one left from my group at this point in the team, or in the meeting right now. So yeah, hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, I think that answers my question, and I, yeah, want to uplift that first part you're talking about in regards to how much work goes into this caseload, with or this work with that's not in the hour, but the case management and all of that. I was just wanting to make sure because with the Z code, I know in the past, like as a mental health provider, we've run into like, well, we can't bill for a Z code, but I would say with this population, there's almost always going to be another billable mental health code, and so just if that was going to be a big push, like maybe one that we don't necessarily have to do. But yeah, cool. Thank you. That helps.
And then I don't know if the community education group um is able to respond on the list of the who's and what's of education.
Well, I guess I can respond. So we just went through and essentially if you are connected to serving or working with or having interaction with families or children that are going through these CSBs, then we are looking for placement of education in pre-licensing or pre-working, pre-work, right? So we're talking about law enforcement, judges, any of the agencies, service providers, therapists, educators, childcare providers, and then really thinking about universally within communities, because obviously parents may want some resources and education and training and may want some additional information, but really universal to destigmatize availability of these programs would be super important, right? So that even within the community, we're raising awareness that these things happen and that there's just like any other kind of mental health issue or behavioral health issue, that doesn't make the person or the child or the family bad. It doesn't make the parents bad. So yeah. So there's a wide scope of people that, stakeholders and service providers and whatnot, and people that come into contact. And generally these are not something that are taught in either in college courses or in pre-service training. And we would be looking for each of the licensing agencies and stakeholders that oversee different individuals be able to work something in, as well as looking to get something added to college coursework and whatnot, requisite for getting licensed, essentially.
Okay, so when it says identify the who's and what's of education, see list, that list doesn't exist yet.
It does.
Oh, it does. Okay.
I didn't realize I mean, if you want me to go through and read every single entity and stakeholder,
No,
we
no,
sent
I was
that
just
to the
curious
folks.
where that list is, so like folks on the team can go and like look at it. Is it in the
Well,
Dropbox?
I think so.
Okay.
I tried to save it back there.
Isn't it in the document that you forwarded to Katie
Yeah,
earlier?
and Katie has a copy of it. I
Okay.
mean,
I'll
Yeah,
look
it's
at
sure
it.
it's
yeah,
in the Dropbox.
yeah, it's literally just a list of what we thought was every participant, and then a catch-all for community people who aren't specifically named.
Okay, yeah, I just would love to see the list. Yeah, thank you.
Amazing. Susan, you're next.
I don't have anything to add.
Jesse.
I think some of the things that I was thinking, like what was just being discussed has a huge amount of overlap with some of the things that our group has discussed. And so as I was reading through, this is something that I've thought in prior conversations is just the need for probably more conversation. I mean, we keep making these sort of silos, and I think the work is not actually siloed. So that was one of my thoughts. And then the other thought that I had is just the need for me personally to be more involved in the funding streams group because all of the discussion about OHA is me. So that was my thought.
Jocelyn.
I don't have any questions. One of the things that I just want to make sure to highlight is all of the consistencies between all of the work groups just shows how aligned we are as a committee of what we see needs to happen, what the goals are, and kind of what it's going to take for all of this to be implemented. I mean, I think across the board, obviously funding is going to be huge for this to continue. But it's nice to see that we've been doing all of this work over the last several months, and there's just a lot of commonalities over the 4 work groups, which is encouraging to see.
Love it. Kristen.
Thanks. I had a couple of quick things. I just wanted to note, so we're designing a response system group, and we spent a lot of time in phase 1 because there's just so much to cover with that particular topic that with respect to what ultimately made it into the phase 2 were very short summaries that I don't think fully capture everything that's really intended by, what's in phase 1. So I would encourage the facilitators to rely on both Miro boards or both areas when looking at the recommendations, because those were very, very short summaries we did, I think, in about 10 minutes. And others, if they're interested in that too. I also wanted to note that the sort of concept of a dedicated external committee or task force or some sort of group doing and overseeing this work appeared to be a theme as well. And I think that was noted in the first work group, which is community education. And so I thought that was interesting and just wanted to highlight that. And I also particularly appreciated the really concise nature of the information that was included in the funding streams sticky notes. And I thought that their idea about a statewide hotline was particularly interesting. And that's it for me.
Katie, you're on mute.
Every time you would think 5 years into this pandemic, I would know better. Robbie, you're next on the list. We lost Melanie since I made the list.
I don't have anything to add. I mean, I would echo what Jocelyn said. It's nice to see that there's consistency across the board. I think a key piece in going forward is making sure that the right people are at the table, and kind of the development of a statewide response. And then obviously that there's funding to support that. So I don't have anything else.
Okay. I think we lost Sarah. Timothy.
Yeah, I have nothing to add.
And Chris.
Hi, I don't have anything specific to add, but in reading this whole document, like it's been challenging for me being on this group and just trying to kind of understand the full scope of it. This really is helpful, even though I was struggling with the Miro board when trying to look at it and figure it out. Now seeing it all together, it's a pretty impressive, and I would agree, like a coordinated effort to really look at how the instead of individual systems can work on things, how there could be a bigger mandate for something like this. I work with people with developmental disabilities. We are dealing with kids all the time with a variety of different issues, including problematic sexual behaviors. And so I'm always trying to think of how does that include everybody, not just a certain group of kids who can, who are ready for therapy versus people who, the general education that everybody needs around it. So thank you.
Fabulous. And appreciate you bearing with Miro and giving it a shot despite its technical challenges. It's one of those, it's so hard, but the end result is worth it. Okay, Justine.
Yeah, I think I just maybe have a couple things but I would start with, kind of echoing. It's so lovely to see all this in the same place, and my brain is like still maybe trying to synthesize a little bit. So look forward to hearing kind of at the end of the meeting today what our next steps are. So knowing that I'm sure many of us will have like thoughts or ideas as we have a little bit more time to digest. So would just advocate for clear opportunities for how to do that. In the like funding stream work groups, I love and so appreciate all the specificity and ideas around like insurance funded services. I think that's so helpful. And I included a note of just, I think there's room for more work discussion in the long term, not necessarily in this document, but about what funding for like non-insurance reimbursable services look like. Because as we talk about this population and potential supportive interventions, some of those things are going to fall outside of like what's traditionally funded by insurance. So just want to kind of uplift and see some more of that. Yeah, and I think the other comment I made was already addressed. So I think that's what I got for now. And I would say also maybe call on Darian. I don't think you made it on the list, but are here now that Sarah left. So would just say, Darian, take your turn.
I don't think I have much more to add, but thank you so much, Justine.
Yes, thank you. So I know Amelia just got back on the computer and probably needs a little bit of time to get into the Miro board, much less have any thoughts or opinions. Rather than my running through the whole list again, just want to open up some space if anyone has any sort of final. Actually, I take that back. If you have something sort of pressing and urgent, I'd love to hear it now. Otherwise, I'll transition not necessarily away from this, but talking a little bit about what comes next and what we'll need from all of you next. Any thoughts, feelings, urgent, bubbling? Fabulous. Also fabulous if you have thoughts and feelings. So I'm not dismissing those. So our next step from here is starting to pull this together to write the report. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen just so I can walk through what we have drafted so far as the draft outline, and a little bit on next steps. So our immediate next steps is we're going to take the Miro board, we're going to take all of the documents that are in the files. If there's anything that's not uploaded in the Dropbox that is important, please send it to me. I had a conversation with one of the work groups during the breakouts about how they have a lot of materials that's already in places. So please, anything that you have that's relevant for writing the report, please make sure to either to put it in the Dropbox or send it to us if you can't. And then we're going to use that information to pull together a rough draft of the report. It's going to be a very rough draft. We're going to do our best to make sure that we're accurately representing what's in everyone's spaces and in everyone's worlds. We'll get this to everyone by the end of the month so that we're able to discuss it in the next in the meeting in July. So there will probably, oh, actually, sorry, let me take a step back. Once we go through all of those documents, we will almost definitely have more questions for you. So we will reach out to each work group separately with some of the questions that we have after reviewing everything. The faster you get back information for us, the more we're able to make sure that we're incorporating it into the report and saving everybody a little bit more work down the line. But obviously, I know that the groups need to meet together and gather all the information. So just to recap, we will be pulling all of this. Make sure that you send me any other documentation. And in the next, probably by Tuesday or Wednesday next week, we'll get back to you with more specific questions that we have in order to pull together the report. And then we'll get a draft of the report by the end of the month. Questions, thoughts, feelings on that? Okay, so I want to walk through how we've laid out the report so far and get any of your any comments or suggestions. I loved what everyone said about the value of being able to see across and how aligned everyone was, and also the flip side of that, that often some of the things in the different groups were duplicative and some of those silos might be a little artificial. So we will definitely, as we go through everything and as we pull together the report, the aim of the report is not to have 4 separate work group reports under one title page, but actually to have something that is reflecting the holistic picture. So we're going to do our best to pull that in as much as we can. Okay, so high level introduction. I will say also that a lot of this is sort of outlined based on what was in the legislation, but giving a little bit of background to the work that we're doing together, understanding CSBs that I should have changed, I apologize, national and state landscape, so looking at what's happening nationally and some of the best practices from other countries or other regions and countries, the gaps that we see right now, best practices and evidence-based approaches. So again, pulling more detailed from what we see other places, going into the funding streams, and then going deep into recommendations. Thoughts, and then a sort of holistic theory of change that incorporates everything. While you're thinking, if you have any thoughts and feelings, I know that lots of people, it's hard to read something. I know several people commented that it was a whole lot and you're still processing. For many of us, it takes a little while to process. If you have other thoughts, please feel free to go back and add them anytime today, tomorrow, over the weekend. And don't feel like you have to share everything right now. And same on the table of contents if there's anything you think that we're missing. Would love to hear any thoughts you all have now, but also feel free to contribute later.
Hey, Katie and everybody. I wanted to chime in because I finally had a chance to sit down with the Miro board.
Yes.
And just the biggest gap that I think I'm seeing here is, uh, I know part of the reason why this committee was convened is because ODHS Child Welfare was saying, hey, we want out. We don't think we should be investigating these cases. And, uh, you know, we want to push this off to the community. And then a whole bunch of community and other folks said, oh, like, wait, we can't, we don't have the services to do this. There is no other entity to take on this work. And so I think that, and maybe I know that the folks that are in the designing a response system said that they have, a lot in their phase 1 doc and the draft in Dropbox. So maybe there's pieces that I'm just not seeing here, but I think that we need to really clearly define in there, like what ODHS's role needs to be. Like I feel really strongly that it would not be okay for them to step away as the system exists right now. And that we really do need to have if they say, hey, we really want this, we really want to be able to step away, and we're looking at these timelines, like how do we maybe give something reasonable, like, hey, if we can get all these other things moving at this pace, then maybe here's a 10-year timeline for ODHS to, reduce their involvement in these cases or change their involvement in these cases. But I feel like there's so much focus on, building the system for response and all those community stakeholders that we're missing that piece of direction for ODHS of how they're going to engage in this work. Yeah, that is just my thought.
Jesse, you have your hand up.
I do. Yeah, I think there's something in kind of this process that just feels a little, I think, off to me, where it feels a little off. It felt a little off, I think, for the first kind of report that I think people were feeling. I think we have been sort of broken into subgroups that don't talk to each other, and we've sort of asked for more time to talk to each other, and we keep kind of not getting it. And then we have this Miro board where we look at the Miro board, and then we still don't really talk to each other. And now you're all going to take what's written here and go write a report and say it's from the group. And it still feels like that. It doesn't feel like a particularly transparent process. That doesn't feel like it will be a report from the group. It feels like it will be your interpretation of the group. And there's something that feels like there's still a little bit of a disconnect there. I don't know that I have specific recommendations other than before there's a report that says that it is from this group. I personally would like to sort of see what comes out of it as sort of like what the recommendations are and feel like we have more say. So yeah, that doesn't feel like a great process, I guess is my
No, absolutely.
feedback.
I appreciate that, Jesse. And I think I would say two things. One is the recommendations are entirely coming from what's here. And so the goal is that process will get us there. I think that to your point, as I've been thinking about, and I see really our role as consolidators. We're not making up information. And but that to that point,
Sure.
there's a whole lot that we don't know, which is why I mentioned, we'll be coming back with questions. The
Yeah.
other thing that's really important for me is that the report that we share at the end of the month is very much a draft with this group, exactly for what you're saying. So that because it needs the report is not from us, the report is from you. We're just helping to sort of consolidate and draft it to give you a little bit more space to think critically about what should be in there. So hear you 100% and definitely agree. I think I'd love to hear anything specific if you have it, or any thoughts you have that you could share later about what you think should be in the report, what shouldn't be, what feels really important, because we're only writing what we hear from you. So
No, for sure. And there's going to need to be some synthesis of some sort for sure. I mean, that was going to be a necessary part of this process regardless. I think maybe what I would have expected was that part of this process maybe should have started a couple of months ago, so that we could have maybe gotten here earlier before it kind of needed to be hurried. But other people have their hands up, so I will stop talking. So
sounds good. I don't know who put their hands up first, so I'm just going to call you in the order on my screen. Robbie, I see you first.
Oh, I just wanted to uplift what Jesse was saying, and then also I was happy to hear you say that the draft is going to come out, and then we're going to be able to give feedback, because I think that's been a concern, that feedback hasn't necessarily been welcomed. I am surprised when you say the report isn't from you all, it's from us, because I think Lisa Bender made it pretty clear that our role is to give information and feedback and come up with ideas, but ultimately we provide that to the facilitators, and the facilitators are the ones that the legislators want to hear from, and it's not our report. And so yes, I just put that out there.
Yeah, appreciate that. And that's just to be a little more clear. I think from our perspective, it's not that I'm maybe putting the responsibility back so much as making sure that the report needs to feel reflective of the insights, the feedback, the experience, the wisdom of this group. And so I think that is sort of one of the guiding principles. Yeah. Ronica, you're next.
Hey, thanks everybody. And apologies for being off camera today. I came back from a conference with COVID, so I'm a little under the weather, but I did just want to go back and touch on something. I think it was Amelia mentioned just a few minutes ago about the agency's interface with this population, and whether or not there would be any kind of changes or movement going forward. And I wanted to assure the committee that while we're working over here alongside, like, we really have tasked the jurisdiction committee. That's the only venue that we have right now that is looking at, and that the legislature would change any statutes that guide which assessments we open up, which families we become involved with, how we work with those families. And we don't currently have any intention nor any ability really to change or modify the families that we work with in any way. I think it's just one of those populations that we recognize that an individual agency is underserving independently. And so really looking to kind of bolster our community strength and resource options around this agency. And then Katie, you touched on this a little bit, but I did, Robbie, want to echo kind of what you said about the report. It is very much in the bill. This final report is tasked of the facilitators to create and to submit with advisement. and considering information provided by the committee. So it sounds like we will have some time, since we only have one, scheduled committee meeting this month. I do think, and I know that our third Thursday falls on a holiday, but there has been conversations about subgroups getting together and having joint meetings, at least maybe the facilitators of the individual subgroups getting together. And so I'm hoping that if their information is still feeling siloed, that we can get those connections and still kind of make that happen to massage out some of the points that are feeling siloed or feeling duplicative, that option is still going to be available. With some communication, we can make sure the facilitators are aware that those conversations are outstanding and that we'd like them to be incorporated into final versions.
Justine, you're next.
Cool. Yeah, I guess have a couple additional thoughts and maybe specific ideas for how we can address some of these concerns. And I guess first of all would just say from the system response work group, and I think when Amelia was offering kind of comments, you mentioned we did have a little bit more language like in our draft document in Dropbox, as well as the notes about ODHS's role. But I would say like that's one of the places where we really highlighted. I don't know that we have a clear recommendation yet, but like these are some of the things we're thinking about. So just would kind of highlight that point. In terms of the next steps, I guess a couple thoughts and just thinking about like getting a draft document, thinking about our work groups. One of the things that I would encourage is just in that draft document or when things are being pulled together, I would love to see really clearly highlighted where there are areas of disagreement. I think that's something we've talked about in our work group, that yes, there's lots of places we align, but there's also some ideas that might be in conflict. And I would love to, in the draft version, before we get to synthesizing, really clearly see, hey, this is a place where there actually was a lot of different ideas and disagreement, and representing those in more question feedback form, as opposed to like trying to put things together that maybe aren't ready to go together. You mentioned, Katie, that like one of the next steps will be questions going out to work groups for response. And I don't know maybe what you were thinking about, but I guess I would just say I would love to see all the work groups getting to see the same questions, as opposed to each work group getting only their own questions. So I think we could all see the same questions. And because so many people have expertise that crosses work groups, everyone would have a chance to respond to those. And then I would love to just see, and I appreciated Veronica's point too, about like, are there other opportunities for a meeting or discussion or different versions of conversation that could be helpful? So I would love to just see, knowing that some of these next steps are like time intensive and y'all are doing a lot of work synthesizing things, just like maybe more frequent updates about where things are at in the process. And when it gets to the point of places where we do get to offer feedback, just really clear direction about how, when, how it'll be used, and that piece. So just a few maybe specific ideas that I know had come up in like our work group after discussing the literature review in terms of actionable things that might support the process.
That's fabulous. Thank you so much. Okay, Amelia.
Hi again. Yeah, I just really do agree with what Jesse was saying, and I feel like my group in particular, as the funding group, we have said repeatedly that like we can't accurately make recommendations without knowing what the other groups are saying. So like, looking at the mirror board now and seeing like what's been posted of what folks, are hoping to achieve and stuff. I mean, there are things that we would change about how we're talking about our funding and additional things that we would include. And so I feel like we are missing a step. I feel like there should be another meeting between now and when you guys draft your report that includes more of this kind of robust discussion and gives the groups a chance to talk to each other about, like, how do we align some of these things, right? Like, we do have multiple groups that are recommending an oversight committee, right? So how do we make sure that that recommendation is consistent? How do we envision that and like make sure that if the language that I wrote is the part that gets uplifted into the report, how do we make sure that that language also addresses what somebody else's intent was for that kind of a group as well? I think there's so many pieces that like we need to be able to talk to each other about, and we haven't had that opportunity. And I know that some of that work falls to you guys to kind of synthesize all that, but I don't know that I would feel comfortable saying, yes, this is a report that represents the recommendations of the group when we haven't had that opportunity for that full group collaborative interaction.
Yeah. I love that point, and I think echoing back to what Justine said about highlighting the areas of disagreement, I think this example is such a great one of in this first, and maybe draft of a report is the wrong language. I think like what we're coming out next is, I think the next conversation to this point is that synthesized view of here's everything. Here's where the group stands in terms of recommendations and theory of change. And so that is, and highlighting, these two groups said that they both mentioned the oversight group. Here were where some of the small distinctions were. Collectively as a group, where do we all stand? And how do we want to reconcile those areas of disagreement? And so I think like one thing that's really important in this next step from us is very much not to just like pick one, but to pull it together so that we can have that cohesive conversation. And then I think the role of the next conversation is to say like, okay, now that we all have that big picture, where does that leave us? What are the gaps that we're still seeing? What is missing? Where are there areas of disagreement that we need to work through collectively? What feels right? What maybe feels duplicative, or whatever we need to make it feel sort of cohesive. And then be able to pull it from there. I think Amelia, to the funding piece, I definitely think that is hear you on exactly where those challenges come, and I think that's probably a good area also for us to dig in a little bit later in that conversation, and maybe ideally before the next meeting of given where we are, where might things shift a bit. Yes. And then I realized I didn't respond, Justine, to your request to have the questions to the full group rather than the work group. I think that's great. So I can definitely do that. Okay. What else?
One thing I was kind of reflecting on was when we did do the literature review, it seemed like we didn't necessarily have a ton of space as a group to go through what was in the lit review. And then that's what created kind of like some challenges regarding like, hey, some of us agree with this and some of us don't agree with this. And so I'm wondering now that like the work groups have put what they need to into this initial document for y'all to synthesize, I feel like it would be helpful to then get that draft and be able to go through it together as a group and have like discussions around that. And I don't know how other folks feel about that, but I think it would help me feel a little bit more confident in saying like, yeah, this is our group's recommendations, because then it's like we see it, we talk about it, we tweak it, we're all on like similar pages, or at least hearing each other out rather than we put all this stuff in and then it's created and then like we don't have the time to really like review it together.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is 100% what we're hoping to do on the next call. For exactly that reason, Jenna. So I love it. Okay. Final thoughts, feelings, reactions, comments, concerns, challenges, any of the things.
I guess, sorry, I have one more question. When it comes to, because we were having two like large group meetings every month, and now we've switched to one large group meeting and then one subgroup meeting. In our small work groups, what is the next step for us to be working on? Or are we done with those smaller groups and we're coming back to the larger group?
So, Reese, you should feel free to jump in if I'm misrepresenting anything, but I think for now we are done with the work group meetings unless your work group, I know the funding group still has some things to discuss and potentially some others. We will sort of throughout the month be sharing updates back, both with the questions that we have based on what we have, and then obviously the draft report when we have it, or the draft document that synthesizes the things when we have that. And then I think coming out of the next meeting when we go deeper into like that collective synthesis and thoughts and reactions, there might be some more deeper dive work group work that needs to happen, but I think for the time being, probably not. Does that sound right? Everybody else on the call?
I guess I would say, I guess I'm imagining, depending on what questions y'all kind of come up with, like I could imagine a world and maybe there are some complicated questions that would benefit from further discussion. So I could see, depending on that step, maybe it being helpful to meet as a work group. But that feels like hard to know until that next step happens.
And like I said, hopefully we should have that really soon. I don't want to promise a specific date. It depends on how long it takes us to work through all the pieces.
Then can I just confirm, Katie, that you mentioned that we could add some additional comments if we're still synthesizing kind of in here, maybe through the weekend, through by Monday? Like, do you have a specific timeline about that?
Yes. So add in through the weekend or before, well, actually by Sunday evening. If you want to add things later, just email me. Because we will probably be like working off of what's on the board starting from first thing Monday morning. And then if you have a thought that comes up after Sunday, it's not like everything's closed off. Just I might not see it unless you email me. Excellent. Okay. Thanks all. I appreciate you. I appreciate everyone taking the time today. I also really appreciate your trust in me stepping into this space. I know that I'm not a face that you've seen before, really, and so it's just lovely to be here and appreciate you. So thank you very much. If you have any other thoughts, feelings, reactions, any of it, feel free to shoot me an email. I'm going to put my email again in the chat. It's also on somewhere, probably lots of places. But if you yeah, that's about it. So thank you. And we're early. Have a great rest of your morning.